Ready to roll?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, hey guys, we're doing this video here. I'm here with Drew Dillon at Project Lift, as you can see. This is in conjunction with the article on the NSCA coach that's on stability. And in that, we go over the mechanics and the anatomy of stability, which you'll see in some other videos. But I wanted to go over one of the exercises to actually teach the athlete how to breathe into the abdomen. Because it's oddly enough, it's not very easy to do, and most people are going to use more of a pathological breathing strategy, which transfers into how they stabilize for movement. So we wanted to go over one really simple one that we both use quite a bit with the athletes and patients to get them, give them the ability to actually do this so they can hopefully apply it to the lift. So Drew's going to get and lay down here on the bench with his legs up. And he's going to kind of scoot his butt towards the bench so that his knees are just above basically his iliac crest or his hip bones. And that's kind of going to be at the bottom of a squat. Now this position, as we've learned from Pavel Kolaj and the Prague School of Rehabilitation, corresponds to a 3-month developmental position. And this is important because between that 3 months and 4.5 months is where the diaphragm learns to integrate with the abdominal wall and the pelvic floor to actually generate pressure in the abdomen, which we talk about quite a bit in the article. So this ends up being a really great position to actually teach this because we're sort of putting the anatomy in the right position to give the athlete a fighting chance to actually feel what they need to feel. Now, in this position, what we need them to do, we obviously want them to breathe into their belly, but belly ends up being confusing sometimes because they just breathe forwards and backwards. Right? We see this a lot in the powerlifting community, and with that comes a lot of belly movement, but then also, unfortunately, turning the back on. And I will talk about that quite a bit in the next article on the extension, compression, stabilizing strategy, but we want to avoid that if we can. So we want to make sure that we're starting the stabilizing process with pressure in the abdomen. And when we're doing this, we want to make sure that the athlete can actually expand laterally, and then also more into the floor. And the lateral and posterior are going to ensure that the back relaxes, or at least balances with the abdominal wall and the pressure in the abdomen so that you don't have overactivity of the erector spinae on the backside, which we see all the time in weightlifting, CrossFit, powerlifting, all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of variations that you can do with this. First off, you can have them kind of hold their sides. So if they go in here and they're going to be just above their iliac crest, right on the side of their abs, their thumb is going to be wrapped around, just butting up against the quadratus lumborum and the erector spinae there. And then the web of the hand is going to be right on the side, and then the fingers are going to actually wrap around the front, just below the ASIS here. And that's going to be a useful position because now the athlete can feel if they're actually expanding into the posterior part, the lateral part, and then most importantly, not necessarily the front part, but the lower abdominal wall. Those are the 3 areas that are the hardest to actually expand into and activate. So we want to have the athlete in that position doing this. So if we get him to bring his hands around here, you can first just see if the athlete can expand and push the belly into the different areas. So the only muscle in the body that can actually create that outward pushing force that we referenced to in the article is the diaphragm. If we activate the abdominal wall concentrically, it actually draws inward, which is popular, but that's actually not correct for how we need to be stabilizing for everyday movements and of course also the Olympic movements and squatting and all that kind of good stuff. So the easiest thing to do is to see, can the athlete push their belly out into your fingertips or their fingertips here? They don't necessarily need to breathe in. You just want to see, can they actually expand? And you want to do this in several areas. So we want to do it here. We also want to do it laterally. That's going to be even more difficult. It's going to require more activation of the abdominal wall. And a lot of times you'll notice that the rib cage, because of the activity of the abdominal wall, the rib cage and the sternum will get pulled down towards the pelvis, which is a great position. And then the last one that is going to be the most difficult is going to be the posterior abdominal wall. Now this one's tough because a lot of times the athlete will crunch down and almost flex the spine. And we don't want the athlete to crunch down to do that. We want the pressure in the belly to push out in all directions. So the bracing one, or just pushing, is the first thing. Once they can do that, now you want to see, can they expand during inspiration? So when we breathe in, we've got Drew here. The diaphragm is going to be right here at the abdominal wall, and when we breathe in, that central tendon of the diaphragm is going to get pulled towards the pelvis. That creates that outward pushing force. So we need to train the athletes to be able to breathe in such a way that it expands the abdominal wall in the front, the back, the sides, and the lower abdominal wall. Right? That's the proper way to get that whole abdominal cylinder activated. But breathing in and out is also a little bit difficult. So we're going to just brace first. The second one level of difficulty is going to be just breathe in, expand, and hold. Right? So we'll have them do that. So just breathe in here, expand, and then you can even hold here and push into the sides to make sure that they're activated. And then go ahead and relax. And so you might have them do many reps just like this, where we get the athlete to actually breathe in here, expand, don't let me move you, push, 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 and then relax. So right now I'm on the sides. I can even go into the back here. So breathe in, push, 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 hold, 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 and then relax. So we're getting the athlete to actually feel what it feels like to activate the whole abdominal cylinder with pressure in the abdomen. Now the hardest one that's very, very important is having the ability to breathe in and out but still maintain pressure. So when we breathe in, that's going to be a lot of concentric activation of the diaphragm to eccentrically activate the abdominal wall and the pelvic floor. When we breathe out, though, the diaphragm goes up, which means now the abdominal wall has to work that much harder to maintain that volume in the abdomen so that the pressure can remain constant. It's much, much more difficult. So if we have him breathe in here, he has to keep this pressure and then breathe all the way out. And if we watch, the ribs get pulled down. That's activation of the abdominal wall. So go ahead and relax. When we do this again, when he breathes in and the belly expands, that's the central tendon of the diaphragm moving down. When he breathes out, the central tendon comes up and the abdominal wall pulls the ribs down. It's much, much more difficult. So you might have the athlete just do 1 breath, 2 breaths, maybe 5 breaths at the most, where they're learning to actually keep that pressure there. It's very, very difficult, but it's really important. And then the last thing that we can do, it doesn't necessarily need to be super heavy, but if we got like a 5-kilo plate here, we might have him hold this. We might have him also just hold a kettlebell. So he might get set here. So we'd have him breathe in and activate, and then breathe out to activate the abdominal wall and still maintain that pressure. But now as we bring the weight back here, he's got to keep the ribs down. So just hold right there. And that's creating a big eccentric load on the abdominal wall. So we have the weight coming through the arm and now via the pec, which is actually creating a force pulling the rib cage up towards the arms, and now the abdominal wall has to resist this to hold here. So this is going to challenge the abdominal wall even more, but this exercise is going to be really, really good for teaching the athlete how to use the abdominal wall in the stabilizing process. Okay? So that was a bunch of different exercises that we gave you, but this is a great position. This 3-month developmental position is a phenomenal position to teach the athlete how to brace and to breathe properly. Because when we stand them up, or you put a barbell in their hand, load it up with 100, 200 kilos or whatever, and you're having them do RDLs or deadlifts or whatever, it's really difficult to do this. So we got to start in a position that gives them a fighting chance to acquire this ability. So hopefully this helps out. We're going to do a whole lot more videos here soon. And then, of course, the NSCA National Convention, we will be there teaching on Olympic weightlifting and stabilizing strategy and all that kind of good stuff. So hopefully this helps, and we'll talk to you soon.